CYC is a free channel that presents the Word of God for everyone. Your support will help us to continue the mission. Visit our website, cycnow.com. Even $1 will make a difference.
Greetings and salutations. My name is George Wolfe. I belong to the Archdiocese of St. Anthony, and I belong to the monastery of St. Athanasius, Scarborough, in England. I've been asked by many people if I would give a testimony of my conversion to Christ from my previous position of an atheist to what I am now considered to be a devout follower of Jesus Christ. I started my life as a carpenter from the age of 15 years old, and when I completed my apprenticeship in the old 5-year apprenticeships, I joined the military in order to get the opportunity of seeing the world. In those days, the military traveled to most parts of the world, and so there was a high chance that I would get the objective that I was looking for, which was to see and share the cultures and the designations of many people. I started in the military as all soldiers do, at the rank of nothing, a private soldier, no rank, no ability, and had to be trained in many subjects to be what is called a basic soldier. And to be a basic soldier, we had to go through different levels to become standard 4, 3, 2, 1. And then after some time, you can be nominated for your first stripe in the British Army. That's called a Lance Corporal. I became a Lance Corporal, then I became a Corporal, and obviously as you become more rank, you get more education and you specialize in more subjects, is what I did. But the time I'd done a considerable amount of touring around the world, which I enjoyed immensely, and seeing life from a young man, having many experiences in Africa and Germany, living in the Arctic Circle for 4 years where I lived in the snow, in various places in Europe, and also in conflict in various parts of the world, I came to the conclusion that there was no God. By the age of 40 years, I was totally satisfied that in this world there was no dog. There's an expression that we have in England where we say, the dog eats the dog. And that was my idea of surviving in this world. That was my conclusion of this world, that there was a lot of bad men. By the time I was 40, I'd been robbed a few times, cheated a few times, lied to a few times, had by now 2 of my own children growing up and was married. And I'm now married for 40 years. At the age of 40 years old, I was in America, having left the forces, and started to build dream houses all over the United States of America. After being abroad and in conflict and many stages of active service, I decided that I had enough of seeing the human kill another human, destroy another human, destroy many humans. It turned my stomach to be sick, and again my conclusion that the world, after 40 years' experience, was not such a nice place, and the only thing a man can do is try to take care of himself, make as much money as possible in order to take care of his family, himself, and keep the rest of the world away from himself. That was my idea of survival. By the time I became 40 years old, I was pretty self-sufficient. I'd learnt many different skills through living in the Arctic, living in the deserts, living in Africa, living all through Europe, and I thought I was pretty practical, pretty experienced, and pretty capable to take care of myself and my family. So my plan in America was to make as much money as possible so that I could buy my own dream home, or the timber from my own dream home, and then I would build that home in that country. That's where I wanted to stay. So I was making that my objective. I was working extremely hard. We were building 4, 5, 6 bedroom houses, finished, move in 3 weeks with a 6-man team. That's hard work. We were working from first light till dark, till you couldn't see. And one day we arrived in a place called Ohio in America. It's just south of Kentucky. And we started a new house. There was nothing there. Whenever we arrived to build a house, there was nothing there. There would be no water, no gas, no electric, just maybe a concrete foundation. And we began to unload the huge trucks that came to deliver the timbers that would be used for these houses. And these houses that I was building was huge, heavy timber constructions. And this was my joy because I loved to see these beautiful, heavy timbered houses. So to me it was hard work, but I made a lot of money and I enjoyed the work. It was all complete carpentry in the old way. So I was very happy doing this work. As we was offloading the timber for this house that was in Ohio, it was minus 18 degrees in the middle of winter. The timber was frozen, the ground was frozen, and the foundation has just been finished, and there was 2 men in the base of the foundation laying the foundation floor. We were unloading the timber alongside this foundation that was going down into the ground, a solid concrete foundation. And I was at the side of the foundation, being past huge pieces of timber, which were for the base construction timbers to start the erection of the house. And a chain snapped on the back of one of these huge American trucks. And a large piece of timber, the size of an English telegraph pole, if you would know what that is for carrying telephone wires, huge timbers like this, one of those came flying towards me like a bullet out of a rifle. And my military instinct was to stop this huge piece of timber going down into the basement where there was 2 men who was finishing off the concrete floor in the base of the foundation. As I reached up with my right hand, I used my left hand as a spring on the concrete wall, which was the foundation wall going down into the ground, to push myself up into the air and to deflect, not to stop, but to deflect this huge piece of timber from going into the foundation floor, destroying the floor, and possibly worse, which was my instinctive priority, was to stop this timber crushing the 2 guys that were working down below. So as I reached up to stop this timber, which was flying through the air, as I said, at the speed of a bullet, It just slid past my hand because the timber was frozen. Remember I said it was minus 18 degrees. And it went through past this hand on to my left hand, bounced on my left hand, which was on the concrete wall, and toppled into the concrete. But I managed to scream, and the two guys ran out of the concrete foundation. They were safe. The floor was destroyed with the weight of the timber that crushed down into the new laid concrete, and my hand completely exploded and was destroyed. The pain was absolutely horrendous. They put a towel around my hand. When I say they were the team that I was working with. It was a 6-man team, and I was the 6th man in the 6-man team. They put me into a Dodge truck, which was one of our trucks that we had for tool carrying, and they whipped me away to a hospital, which was about 20 minutes ride from where we were working in this isolated, beautiful, scenic part of Ohio. Once I arrived at the hospital, because I was English, it took more than 2 hours to discover my details, my documents, and the assurance that I had, which was a basic insurance. Remember, I'd been a soldier for all of my life, apart from the 5 years when I was an apprentice. And so what happened was I did not have a comprehensive insurance that would take care of the problem with my hand. I had what was called a skeleton insurance because I considered myself to be able to walk on water, having been trained to the level that I'd been trained in the British forces. I considered myself to be bulletproof. Once I arrived at the hospital, they started to look at my details, investigate my insurances, and there was a lot of talking, to-ing and fro-ing. And so after 2.5 hours of standing there, in the most horrendous pain that I'd ever experienced in my life, the hand was destroyed, wrapped around and held together and in place with a huge towel that was lying in the back of one of the trucks. A little Jewish lady came walking from the hospital into the reception with a huge syringe. And she shot that syringe into my arm. Thank God for her. And that killed the pain. The pain subsided almost immediately. And it was like heaven in comparison to the 2 hours more that I'd been standing in complete horrendous pain. I went into the hospital. They started operating on me more or less immediately. And halfway through the time that had elapsed, something like 9 hours, 2 of the top surgeons who was working with the surgeon who saved my hand, who ironically was a Jewish plastic surgeon from New York. She was told by the 2 surgeons working with her that you will never save his hand. You need to quit. And she said, I will not leave him. I will do everything possible to save his hand. Apparently, unbeknown to myself, my wife had told the surgeon, because I didn't even know she was at the hospital, but in the 2 hours more I'd been waiting, she'd actually been brought to the hospital. And she told them that I used to play the guitar, and I'd be very upset if I was not able to play. And so she took this to heart, and she tried everything that was in her to save my hand. After 18 hours, the surgery was finished. And she rebuilt this hand, step by step, reconnected all the tendons in the fingers, and she replaced a lot of the bones with wires, and using the latest technology in the world, she rebuilt this hand. Now, if I show you this hand in front of this camera now, you'll see that this hand is a normal hand, and it closes just like your hand closes. functions just like your hand. If you watch this hand close, you'll see it cannot close. This finger is broken, and this one is very stiff. This one is gone, and this one, in fact, is the one which folds in the way that the other hand does. That means that my grip, how I hold things, is from this forefinger and thumb only. The others just lie there, but they look pretty cool to me because this hand was completely gone. Now, I think you can imagine the shock and the horror and the pain for a carpenter not to have a left hand. It makes life very difficult, and it meant that I had to retrain myself. But before we get to that, there's an important thing that I need to tell you that I never expected, that I never telephoned or got on the Skype and called, was there was a little man from Tennessee, which is where I was living on the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. I was living on that border, just inside Tennessee, a place called Oneida. And he came to my bed whilst I was still in hospital recovering from this surgery, and they was about to cut off this finger because it gone black. That means that this finger was rejecting. And although they were pumping antibiotics into my body so that the hand would have its best chance of survival, this finger actually turned black. And the surgeon, Dr. Buzanglu, the little Jewish surgeon, she told me that she would have to remove the finger, otherwise it would spread into the hand and I would possibly lose the hand, so on and so forth, if it wasn't controlled.